Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. This is your English class and I am your subject teacher Fauzia. I welcome you all in my class. We had started with reading selection 3.2, that was Lingkuan gorge, and this was written by Tu Peng Shang. He was a Chinese writer, and the message that he conveyed through that story, that a man should never leave his post, a man should be responsible for the task that was assigned to him. Okay, from this paragraph we have to continue. Previously what we have learned about the Chang Yu, who was 7 or 8 years boy, and he was in a cave, and he was sitting on a stool at the threshold of the cave, and he told the narrator that he had been looking after his young sister. So the narrator, he asked this question to him, that what does his father do? So answer is, he opens up mountains. The child replied proudly. Where? Cheng Yu pointed with pursed lips at the work site opposite. So when he inquired to the young boy that what does his father do, the answer that he had given was that, in a proud tone, he was very proud of the job of his father. He told him that he works very hard, he opens up the mountains, right? जो माउंटेन्स पे काम करते हैं, डेफिनेटली इन ऑर्डर टू ब्रेक द माउंटेन दे हैड टू एक्सप्लोड इट. सो हिज आंसर वाज दैट ही ओपन्स अप द माउंटेन्स. सो वेयर, that was a question by the narrator, and he did not answer it. He just pointed towards the direction, and that direction was just opposite to the work site. With the pursed lips, means with the closed lips, he pointed towards the direction that was opposite to the work site. I looked. All I could see was a searchlight beam shining through the drifting snowflakes straight up into the heaven. So when he looked towards that direction, what could he see over there? He could see the searchlight beam. जो सर्च लाइट थी उसकी रोशनी उसको दिखाई दे रही थी. एंड एज द स्नो वाज फॉलिंग, द स्नो फ्लेक्स वर फॉलिंग डाउन. सो थ्रू दैट बीम, थ्रू द snow flakes, he could see that beam as it was coming. It was going straight up into the heaven. In its light, it could vaguely discern a few dozen men. So what could he see in that searchlight beam? He could see, not clearly but vaguely, he could see few dozen men, few people who seemed pasted on the side of the towering cliff. जो क्लिफ थी, जो चट्टान थी, उसकी जो साइड पे उसको जो है ये लोग जो है वो, इट सीम दे हैव बीन पेस्टेड ओवर देयर. Drilling holes for dynamite charges. Actually what they have been doing over there while hanging on that cliff, they were opening the holes for dynamite charges. Dynamite क्या होता है? Explosive material है that would explode the mountains, that would open up the mountains. The holes were like the steps of ladder to the sky. अब cliff की sides पे चूँकि ये holes बन रहे थे, तो ऐसा लग रहा था जैसे ये एक सीढ़ी बन रही है that was going up towards the sky. How can you tell which one is your father at this distance? I asked. So dozen of people, they have been working over there, and among those people to see who was his father was definitely a difficult thing, because they were very tiny and no one can see or recognize them as different people. So what he asked, that how can you see from that distance that who is your father? I cannot see him plainly, but Pa says he can see me. He says all he has to do is to turn around, and I often sit here so he can see me. Okay, this was the answer of the boy. He said that I cannot see him from that distance, but my father said that when he turns around, जब वो ज़रा सा मुड़ता है तो क्या होता है? He can see me sitting here. So that's why he often sit there, so that his father could see him. So that was it. The icy snow melted from my boots, my numbed legs thawing out, aching painfully. I stamped to help the circulation. Oh, he was very surprised, and he was very actually astonished to listen that answer from the boy, that it was not he who could see him, it was his father, for the satisfaction of his father, that the son was safe, and he was there in the cave. he stand over there or he sit over there. So then what happened, as he had come out, the narrator had come out from had come from the outside, and there was snow falling outside. So as his boots were covered with the snow, it started melting because of the warmth of the cave and of the stove, and his legs, which were numbed because of that intense cold. So definitely what he did, these were acting painfully. He was having a pain in his leg, and in order to enhance the circulation, what he did, he stamped on the floor. स्टैम्प मीन्स जब उसने जो पाँव को ज़ोर ज़ोर से ज़मीन पे मारा. देन व्हाट हैपेंड, चैंग यू वेव्ड हिज हैंड वार्निंगली. आई अंडरस्टूड ही वाज अफ्रेड आई वुड disturb his baby sister. I would wake up his baby sister. So when he stamped his feet on the floor, that boy, he became conscious, and he just waved his hand in warningly, and he just warned that person that you are disturbing the baby sister who was sleeping. You really take good care of your sister. I commend it. So he was really amazed, and he praised that boy that he was a good brother, as he take good care of his sister. Mama says me to look after her. When mama comes home, I can knock off. So he told him that it is his duty in the absence of his mother. So when mother comes, she takes that duty from him, and he can knock off, he can leave that duty. So you are on the job every day. I hugged him. What does mama do? He pointed to the road below the cave. So he again appreciated that young boy who is 7 or 8 years old, who take care of his sister, who sits over there in order to give satisfaction to his father. So then he asked about the mother, that where is the mother and what does she do? So he pointed to the road below the cave. वो क्या करता है कि जो केव से नीचे एक जगह है उसकी तरफ वो इशारा करता है. I could see a person standing by a telephone pole beside the road, covered with snow. She looked like a white stone image. What could he see over there behind the cave, below the cave? What could he see over there? A person was standing in that stormy weather, and she was all covered with the snow. It seemed from the distance कि कोई white stone का image बना हुआ है. Apparently she was directing the traffic. The road, not very wide, had been blasted through the rock. Ordinarily, cars, mules, donkeys, and people. Okay, apparently, seemingly looked that she was directing the traffic. The road was not wide, and many different types of traffic, like cars, mules, donkey, and the people, they just pass through that road. And this road has been made by blasting through the rock. ठीक है, ये जो माउंटेन्स पे रोड्स वगैरह बनी होती हैं, तो वो बहुत मुश्किल से बनती हैं. क्योंकि उनको ब्लास्ट करना पड़ता है, फिर उनको स्ट्रेट करना पड़ता है, उसको पेव करना पड़ता है. सो it wasn't very wide. No doubt streamed in both directions along that road 24 hours a day. Someone had to keep the traffic in order. अब चूँकि वो रोड बहुत वाइड नहीं है, वो टर्निंग पॉइंट है जहाँ से बहुत से जो है वो ट्रैफिक गुजर रही होती है, और जो है वो वन वे नहीं है, दोनों साइड से ट्रैफिक आ और जा रही है. तो one has to stand over there in order to take care and good control of the traffic. Today, because of the big snow, there weren't many people or vehicles on the road. So she could very well have spent the day at home, but there she stood, and there she would remain 3 months, 5 months, 3 years, 5 years, if needed be. So as it was a stormy weather, it was very cold weather, and snow was falling, then she had that plea that she could stay at home because the traffic wasn't too much over there. But she did not take care of this thing. She was on her duty, and as she could remain over there for 3 hours, for 3 months, for 3 years, for 5 years, and it depends on the need for how long she had to stay there. Perhaps from time to time she raised her head to gaze up at her child and at her husband, who was scaling the cliff between the mountains and the sky. Okay, time to time, वक्तन फ़वक्तन क्या करती है, वो अपने सर को ऊंचा करके she looked towards her son, she looked towards the cliff, the mountain where the husband had been working, and when he paused to wipe the sweat from his brows, could he see the determined figure of his wife and the tiny image of his little boy? So that question came to the writer's mind, that both of them are very responsible towards their job. Not only both of them, all the three members of the family, they are very responsible towards their job. So he thought that when the husband would get tired and when he would wipe the sweat from his brows, then would it be possible for him to see that figure of his wife and to see the tiny image of his little boy? Even though it was a snowy, windy night, even though the worker, his wife and children, could not see one another clearly, I was sure they could feel a mutual loving encouragement and sense that each was looking forward to the moment of family reunion. So, though in that hazy weather, in that foggy and that snowy weather, it wasn't possible for three of them to look or have a glimpse of each other, but whenever they looked towards each other's direction, then definitely they would feel that a mutual loving encouragement, that they all are on their job and they would be of the view that they would have the family reunion again. I glanced at Cheng Yu. The child had placed his hands in his sleeves and pulled his neck into his collar as he kept dozing off. So when that narrator looked towards Tang, who that was a young boy feeling cold, and he had put his sleeves on his hands, और उसने अपनी जो कॉलर है उसको भी खींच के अपने नेक के ऊपर कर लिया है, and he felt sleepy. He was dozing off. You're liable to catch a chill. Better get into bed and go to sleep. So as he was sleeping, he was dozing off. So he had given him the suggestion that it is better to go into the bed and to take a sleep, otherwise he will catch a chill. ठंड लग जाने का उसको खदशा था, but he looked at me dreamingly for a moment, probably thinking that his parents had returned. As he was in a sleep, he was feeling sleepy, so he looked towards me in a dreamingly way, and he thought that as if his parents had returned. But after a moment he realized who I was, and he shook his head violently. No, I won't. Why not? He rubbed his eyes with his fist. Papa and Mama say a man should never leave his post. So he violently he said that no, I will not sleep, I will not go to bed. And on his inquiry, he said that my parents, they say that one should not leave one's post. I hugged him tightly and pressed my cheek against his, then rose, buttoned my coat, pulled my hat down firmly, left the cave and walked down the path, following the road that had been blasted through the rock. I pushed on towards the words of the child echoing in my head. A man should never leave his post. A job was waiting for me. I wanted to reach my destination without any further delay. So these words really made him emotional. So that narrator hugged him tightly. He really praised that boy and loved what he said. He had been encouraged by those words, so he rose up from his place. He buttoned his coat, make him ready to go out, and walked down the path. That was the path that had been blasted through the rock, that was paved. So I pushed on. What compelled him to move on? The words of the boy that echoed in his mind, that echoed into his head, that one should never leave his post. So this sense of responsibility was aroused by that little boy. So he went towards his job, and he wanted to reach his destination without any further delay. So that was the sense of responsibility that the writer wanted to awake in all of us, that once we had taken some responsibility, we should keep on going with that responsibility. We should not leave our job, our responsibility, before we reach to our destination. Thank you very much for today, and tomorrow inshallah with the exercise of this chapter I will come again.